Welcome to Universal Man. My name is Mark Kweppett and I'm here to help you sharpen your masculine edge. And in today's video, I'm going to teach you how to leverage shame in a positive and healthy way. In today's modern culture, I think shame is treated like this big ultimate evil that you want to completely remove from your life. While there are definitely some problems with shame, I think trying to do this is a very bad idea and will really set you back. So if you've been following me for any amount of time, then you could probably guess that I'm not the biggest fan of political correctness. And, I have a number of issues with that whole belief system, but one of my pet peeves really is about the way the politically correct crowd handles shame. So they tend to treat shame like it's the worst thing ever. Like it's the same, it's almost on the level of physical assault. And they act as if they want to completely abolish all shame and shaming and don't you shame me kind of stuff. But, at the same time, they usually tend to use shaming as one of their primary ways of communication and getting their point across. They won't hesitate to try to make you feel bad for what you believe in or what you do. That hypocrisy aside, because of the PC crowd's influence on the modern dialogue, I think this understanding of a proper and healthy perspective on shame has been really kind of lost and muddied. And I think that this is a very damaging thing because shame is a very natural and normal part of human functioning. And if you just treat it as if it's this blanketedly bad thing, then you're going to have a lot of problems, basically. So first, let's talk about destructive shame and what that really looks like. Let's give the shameophobes their due here, because shame absolutely can be a very destructive and negative thing. If you're carrying around a lot of dysfunctional shame and you don't know how to address it or how to handle it, it will absolutely screw up your life. So here's how that works, all right? Shame is, if we're just going to really kind of narrow in on it, it's a emotional sensation. It's a feeling kind of emotional pain of where you don't feel good about yourself. But where you really start getting into trouble with shame is with the stories that you attach to that emotional sensation. Okay, so the really destructive narrative that you can attach to shame is the idea of, I feel bad, I did bad, I am bad. And it's this part of I am bad, that's the real issue there. As soon as you label yourself as bad, a whole bunch of crap comes with it. Basically, you start treating yourself as if you were bad. Someone who has a low self-image, they are unable to positively sacrifice for themselves because they don't think they're worth the effort. Usually they'll engage in some kind of self-destructive activity. This is what, on the lesser levels, it might just be a lack of confidence and inability to show up and work for the things you want. But as it gets more intense, usually the self-destruction becomes more intense. So this leads to addictive behavior, where you think you're bad, so you try to escape yourself and you use some kind of addictive crutch to aid in it. And if things get bad enough with this I am bad mentality, then you will actually own that narrative. You'll embody that I am bad and become essentially a villain who, just goes around and does bad stuff, and spreads your, self-hate to other people as well. And that's obviously not a good thing. And because of these negative consequences of improperly handled shame, you have to exercise at least some safeguards around it. I think the place where it's most appropriate to be guarded against shame is around children, really, because children don't have the psychological defenses necessary to really process this stuff. If they're constantly getting shame thrown at them, then they don't really have the strength, the ability to keep their identity in a positive place. They will just end up identifying with the shade being thrown their way, and it's going to really screw them up. But at the same time, you can't completely protect kids from shame. They still need to be corrected when they behave poorly. They need to learn how to deal with people in the world who disagree with them and might be mean and bullies and all that kind of stuff. But I think what ends up happening is people who see the negatives of shame and they're afraid of it, they get super protective then and they try to, wrap their kids in a bubble. And I think what that does is it essentially produces the modern snowflake, as they call it, the person who can't handle someone else's opinion or someone else's, meanness or rudeness or whatever without being triggered and flying off the handle. And the reason they do this is because since they've never developed the mechanisms for handling shame, essentially anyone can walk by and, either by disagreeing with them or insulting them or whatever, they can kind of stick their fingers in their emotional junk and twist them and hurt them. And these people, they feel so vulnerable that just the prospect of free speech sounds terrifying, because to them, that seems like it gives anyone the right to come up and punch them in the face. And, obviously that's not actually what's happening. But since, they're so emotionally vulnerable, it feels like an assault. And it's kind of a crazy thing, but it's mostly because they essentially are weak of character and are unable to, defend themselves. So if the problem is this destructive narrative around shame, where it screws up your self-perception, okay, then where we want to be is a constructive relationship with shame. And here's how that works. So basically, instead of that destructive narrative where it's like, I feel bad, I did bad, I am bad, it's something like, okay, I'm good, all right, I'm actually good. And I'm feeling this pain of shame because there's something in opposition to my goodness going on. All right, it's claiming a positive identity first, but then seeing that, hey, there's something that's conflicting with this positive identity, and that's what's causing the shame. From this perspective, then, shame can be seen as a useful signal, something that's just letting you know that there's a problem here, kind of like physical pain, like your body, because of its nature, if you put your hand in fire, it's going to cause pain, right? It's going to cause pain so that you can take your hand out of the fire, right? Well, that's how you can view shame. It's the sign that there's some kind of problem that's, on the psychological or emotional level. And it's just saying, hey, here's some pain so that you take care of this issue. So by embracing this perspective, you really gain access to a personal power in a sense. So for example, all right, say I screw something up, say I behave poorly, and what that causes then is for me to experience shame, all right? And I've learned at this point that I want to jump on that. That shame is a useful, powerful resource. It's something very, very useful to me. I've realized that I can take that pain, that shame that I'm feeling, and I can hold it up and connect it to the poor behavior that I engaged in. And if I link the two together, then what happens then is that creates a learning experience. You see, your emotional brain, as far as I understand, your limbic system, it learns through experience, and experiences primarily of pain and pleasure, okay? And by looking at the pain of the shame of how you behaved and linking it to that activity, well, then next time that you're presented with a similar situation, you're more likely to behave in a different way, okay? And this is why it's so dangerous to try and just blanketedly remove shame, okay? Because you can't grow that way. You can't learn. Because if you don't look at the shame of how you've behaved, then what ends up happening is that emotional impulse that caused you to misbehave in the first place, it's just going to keep firing. There's been no retraining, no course correction. And because you need the discomfort, you need the pain there in order to drive that rewiring. Now, things get a little tricky when you feel shame over something that you shouldn't feel shame over. This is kind of like a shame misfire, and this kind of stuff happens all the time. So, for example, all right, imagine that, someone is a dick and they make fun of you for your race, okay? And, you find yourself feeling shame over your race. Well, that's screwed up. You shouldn't feel shame over your race. That's, an authentic part of who you are, right? So this is where you need the challenger mindset. Go check out my video on the challenger mindset if you haven't. But basically, you need to learn how to identify faulty thought patterns and essentially respond aggressively and kill them. You have to put them down. Otherwise, bad thoughts will destroy you just as, much as bad people will. So in this situation, you need to understand that the thing that you are feeling shame about, it's not really about your race, because that's an authentic part of you, right? And if you believe that that's a good thing, then the shame's not, or your race is not the issue. The issue is that you're taking that other person's opinion or thoughts seriously to the point where you're letting them negatively impact and control you. So with shame, the key thing that you need to be looking at is whether you are in the wrong or the feeling is in the wrong. But either way, there's like shame is a friend, and it's letting you know that there is some kind of error, there is some kind of malfunction in the way you're showing up or in the way that you're experiencing the world that needs to be corrected if you would like to move forward in a better way. So when shame's present, it either means that, hey, you did something wrong, you need to learn from it, connect it to the bad activity, and, rewire your emotional system. Or it means that, hey, you're thinking poorly. You're giving someone else too much power over you. Or, maybe you're just indulging in a negative thought that's not useful. Maybe, you haven't taken a firm stance on what you believe and aren't taking ownership and really holding that confidently. Either way, there's some kind of problem. You need to correct it. And so that's why shame is so useful, because it is one of your best course correction mechanisms, personal development tools. And so lean into it, learn how to use it. Don't be afraid of it. Okay. And sometimes there's a lot of this crap there. And especially if you've had a tough childhood, like if someone else has unloaded a bunch of crap into you when you were young, well, you might need even a little help working through that. And that's where, therapy and that sort of thing can be quite useful. But for, the average person who's relatively well adjusted, you just got to use shame as a tool. See it as a friend. When you do this, then you're going to basically learn how to respect yourself and honor your inherent dignity more and more fully. That's really what it's about. It's about letting your inherent goodness shine more fully in all of your actions and thoughts. So that's it. Hopefully all of this made sense and you got something valuable from it. As always, please like, subscribe, leave your thoughts in the comments. I really enjoy hearing them. And, stay sharp, and I'll see you in the next one.